You and I had an interesting conversation in the middle of the week that I hit you with, and it made me kind of think.
We did? I don't remember me talking to you.
I know you've been on a high, so it's okay. Right. You really, yeah.
Sorry, Walker.
Dude, I really do hear like an echo for me.
Well, it's not coming over here, which means it won't come over on the recording. So that's your West Side equipment.
You know, I'm happy you're in a good mood, but I don't know if I'm happy you're in a good mood. You're kind of annoying when you're in a good mood. Usually it's when you're in a bad mood that you tend to be annoying, generally speaking. But you, it's like, I like depressed Gatrey. Selfishly, you know what I mean? You don't want your friends to be depressed. I think I like depressed Gatrey. I think this Gatrey here is a bit much. A healthy, happy Gatrey is doing too much.
A healthy, happy Gatrey is an extra Gatrey.
Yeah, and I don't know if I need any more of that.
So, Walker, it's hard to turn off. That West Side joke, I don't know where that came from. Anyway, go on to this conversation you say we had allegedly.
What was I talking about?
You said we said we talked. I don't remember talking to you, but anyway, go ahead. Keep humoring me, I guess.
So I don't think it's a hot take. I don't think it's a hot take at all. But it's interesting to kind of hit your own epiphany on things. I don't think it's possible to be part of a corporation, to be in corporate America in an entirely different industry, and be outside of that industry a authentic content creator.
We did talk about this. Was that this week? I thought that was last week.
Last week. That's what we're talking about. The week that you didn't have the boys.
Look at you being all educated. Sorry. I can't.
You can't help it? Yeah, I know.
No, I do remember us talking about this. I'm limited on the details I can present, but
I can do that.
Okay, well then you go then. I'll just sit over here.
You try to hold it together?
Trying hard, bro. Yeah.
I really am happy for you, but oh my God. No, what I realize is that, you know, you're part of a corporation, and I'm getting into like ownership, whether you own stocks, real estate, your own business or whatever. You know, shout out to a gentleman named Boyce Watkins who talks a lot about, you know, being financially independent and owning your own. And one of the things that I've heard people like him and others say is that you have more leeway when you own things. And it's either own or be owned. And what it really dawned on me in the past few weeks is that, you know, I had I wouldn't say a coworker. Coworker kind of implies more personal, like we actually work together. But someone from my company got fired about a week or two ago for something they posted on social media, right? Now, I don't know this person. I'm not friends with this person, so I don't know what was actually posted. But you know, we talked a lot in the past about cancel culture, and oftentimes you think cancel culture, we think celebrities, right? I think people tried to cancel Lecrae a few weeks ago. We've seen people want to cancel Jay-Z,
J. Cole.
Like we see people try to go at celebrities. So we know that's a thing, but it's interesting when cancel culture begins to make its way towards everyday people, right? And one of the things we do, you know, from a society standpoint, we don't really want to have conversation. We just want to get outraged and react to people whose views are different from ours. And where that leads me to thinking, Gatrey, is if we're going to be an authentic content creators, what does that really mean for us in this new normal? You know what I mean? Because I think for the most part, we are clean. And I don't even think that's intentional. I just think people can listen to us and hear a genuine, authentic conversation. Like, we don't use profanity. Like, even when we have guests on, they're like, can we curse or can I curse? And I tell them the same thing I tell everyone. I want you to be yourself because Gatrey and I are going to be ourselves regardless. We're going to be comfortable. So we want you to be comfortable being you. And I think because of how we talk, you ever heard people try not to curse in their conversation?
Yeah.
And it just doesn't, it feels forced. It doesn't feel, you know what I mean?
And then conversely, I know with me, when I try to use profanity, it sounds awkward. And so
because it's not how you talk.
Right. So
what I love about our conversations is that it's authentic.
Right.
And so I think for the longest of time, we have been very clean for the most part. But what is leading me to think is that once we really begin to take our podcast to the next level and really begin promoting it, what does that mean? Because everyone has an opinion. Like, we're not a niche podcast, right? Like, we talk about society, we talk about last week's current events, and we actually give our authentic opinions about it. Everyone, I don't care what your religious beliefs are or what kind of value system you have, we all have an opinion about something that goes against the majority. You know what I mean? We all have a hot take or something, like whether it's me and my opinion about feminism overall, or how and I'm thinking of past conversations, how you felt about listening to R. Kelly's music despite the allegations against him. Like, we all have opinions that go against popular thought. And I'm wondering, what does that mean for a content creator? Like, a good example of what I'm talking about is Jemele Hill. I think that's the best example we can use. She was working for the Worldwide Leader, was doing very well in her profession. And because she was being her authentic self on Twitter, it led to her having issues with her employer, right? They own her time. They own, a lot of their IP, their intellectual property, the whole nine. And so for Jemele to speak her mind, it was representative of her company, ESPN. And so Jemele got to a point to where for her to be her authentic self, she had to walk away. And shouts out to her and Carrie Champion. They now have a show called The Disruptors on Vice TV. I don't know if you've heard of it, but they landed that and they can be their authentic self. So it's almost like, to be in that space, you have to either own your own stuff and have multiple streams of income, or align yourself with companies that support you speaking freely or that provide a space for that. I don't know currently that I'm positioned to be able to do that. Now, I intend to do that. I intend to continue to do what we've always been doing. But as we begin to really, because I love our product, and we've been getting a lot of positive feedback from people who aren't our regular listeners about our podcast. So I just want to know what your thoughts, man, moving forward, like for us to be our authentic selves and speak freely in our space. Everything we say, is going to be out there. It's going to be our statements, and we're going to be judged by it. What are your thoughts on this reality?
Well, Walker, I do agree. This reality does position us and the growth of our podcast in a really weird space, I guess. But I guess with every episode, for me, I get more and more with my I don't know what term I'm trying to use, but I kind of get more and more comfortable with me on air. As you've seen in our catalog, I've shared a lot about myself personally. It's no different than I am with the microphones not here. If a topic comes up and it's about insecurity, I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about my own struggles. I've never really had any hesitance to do that. But conversely, with especially right now, the times we're in terms of the racial climate, I don't know, Walker. I felt so empowered by the conversations I've had off air and even the ones we've had on air. And I've gotten more value in my voice. And, I'll be honest, when we had that conversation, I never once thought about how my employer would take my comments. I never thought about that. Now, my employer is structured a little differently. We have I guess we have an organizational presence, if you will, but we've got the heartbeat of a mom and pop, right? So it leads to a lot of flexibility, a lot of freedom, but I just don't think we have the powers that are just like, peering at everything you're doing socially and, really challenging you to maybe alter your message or think about your message. We don't really have that. But I know for me personally, I've just come to a point to where I've gotten so much, and this podcast has been like, it's been like the saving grace for me because I've become so comfortable in my own skin because of this. And I'm just like, this is who I am. I don't feel like anything I'm saying is threatening. I don't think anything that I'm saying or presenting puts our organization in a compromising position or anything like that. So to me, it's just kind of like, I'm gonna just do me over here, and I've really, and it's funny, I was talking to my wife about this early this week. I really got to the point to where like, I've gotten so comfortable if my views, if my employer doesn't like my views or doesn't really understand or accept my views, and that leads to termination, so be it. It's like I can't allow it to change me. You employ me, okay, great, but I mean, I've worked really hard to get where I am. I'm sure, I can work to find somebody else who appreciates the authentic Ronnie. One other thing, Walker, I don't want to ramble here, but I have to leave this here. Going through the process of being laid off from an organization where I thought I was going to finish my career has done a lot with the inner workings of Ronnie. Being blessed to recover from that, and I think improve and enhance what I bring to the table since then empowers me too to be like, okay, well, if this doesn't work for you, cool. I've gone through this enough times to where I know I can pivot and find something else. And it's okay. We can both win. So that's long-winded, but those are my thoughts. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
No, it's not necessarily like, I just want to know how you feel about it. Your take and your approach.
Walker, you're not going to like what I say about this, right? And my actually my shout out is kind of deals with this, but we do, I think we as society, social citizens as I call them, we do hold people in a high regard. I'll give you an example. If and this is very hot, but I'm just coming out with it. No, because it's going to give away my stuff for the end. Dang it. But we call for action. We call for action. We call for people to be disciplined or even terminated from their roles if they say something that doesn't really sit well with us. That is kind of the cancel cultures you talked about earlier. I believe we all contribute to that. I believe we all desire that because we know, if you step out of line, at least in my point of view, if you're not given a lesson, and that lesson being, you being taken away from your job, how are you gonna really learn from it? Let's take your finance, your income streams away, and then you'll learn your lesson, and maybe you'll be a better individual on the other side of it. I believe we all subscribe to that. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do, but I think here's where it becomes a problem: is who decides what's right or wrong.
Well, now that I don't have
in some of these conversations.
That's a good point, and I don't have the answer to that. That's a really good point.
See, if I say something and I don't think we've done this, right? But if we come out and say something that's just black or white is wrong, right? And there's nothing to counteract that. Even if you do challenge me and I stand my ground in saying something that's wrong, like if I say something very defamatory towards white people or towards women or towards the LGBTQ, which, we have not done that.
Right.
Of course, like I think that's an easier thing to agree with. But what about those gray areas? And you got to remember, we're talking week after week after week. And there's going to come a time where we talk about those gray areas, right?
All right.
If I am critical about feminism, or if I am critical about something that I see in a particular community that I'm not a part of, what then? Right?
Right.
Even if I feel I'm being objective, people in that group may not agree with that and will want me held accountable. So do I get fired? Like you go again, Jamel Hill. Jamel Hill called Trump white. Did she call him a white supremacist? I think.
Oh yeah.
It could even be true, but because of the backlash that she got from that, look at the friction that was between her and her job as a result of that. And my thing is the ability to speak your mind and be yourself. Yes, to your point, like, and what I will say to you, to your point, and it's not, and hear me when I say this, like, I have not been where you are. Like, I've never been laid off in my professional career. You know what I mean? I've been kind of ascending. So it's almost like I have further to fall.
I didn't think about that.
Should that happen? Yeah. So it's almost a fear of heights from a professional standpoint. As I climb that ladder, I don't have a parachute or anything to assist me on the way down. So I have to be very careful about this tightrope that I'm walking. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense, actually.
And so, and I guess that's what, because my thing is I'm not changing, but it's almost like two things I'm realizing is that number one, I have to understand the difference between intent and impact, right? I can intend to communicate something, but if I don't communicate it in a right way, then the impact from what I've said will be what people respond to as opposed to my intent, right? Like if I say, classic example, I was trying to use an example when we was talking about The Last Dance about Phil being the best coach, basketball coach, right? And I tried to make a point using Bill Belichick. My intent was to say something, but the impact triggered a completely different response from you and some of our listeners. Right. So what I'm learning to is as I'm developing my thoughts throughout the week, I need to be able to assess, OK, how do I get my intent across to the people so that when an impact is made, it lines up with my intention?
OK.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I have to manage my emotions when we're talking about racial issues and talking about whatnot. Like I have to make sure that what I am intending to say, the point I'm intending to make gets properly communicated. And usually between, you and us knowing each other, we know where our hearts are. If we can match our intent with the impact, it's less likely that you'll have those types of responses from people who don't see eye to eye with you.
Gotcha. Right?
At the same time, you're going to upset people. Like I've seen it with every person with a major platform have ticked people off. So I think even with that, Gatrey, I understand the necessary need to kind of protect yourself by owning some things from a real estate standpoint, owning, like I own stocks and they've been doing really well in during this pandemic, but there's more I need to do because, my wife is depending on me. You know what I mean? And so even in her voicing her concerns, she wants to make sure, hey, I know you have a lot of strong opinions. You feel passionate and she loves the podcast, but she's like, hey, don't hurt that direct deposit or, make sure we're okay. You know what I mean? And it's like, I hear you, but it's almost like I have to stop recording.
And I
don't want to do that.
It's hard for me based on the reality that you just reminded me of where you are professionally. You want to do well. You want to ascend. I don't think it's wrong to want that. But one thing that I factor into that is what does Caesar Walker go through in terms of a mental health perspective by just kind of not suppressing your voice, but maybe being overly concerned about how your voice is how your voice is received to the listening public. Like that's gotta be causing some warfare here, right?
Just recently, because
Okay.
I really haven't had to worry about it.
Gotcha.
And it really hit me when my after what I mentioned with person at my job being fired, that prompted a conversation with my group and our management. And they reminded us about policies they put in place about social media. Now, I'm not on social media a lot, but when we are on social media moving forward, guess what we're going to be promoting? Podcasts.
Yeah.
So I begin to think about, okay, now I have to really think through on this, and I have to decide what's important. Now, again, it was never my intention to remain in corporate America, but it's just in the past, it's just in a short time, Gatrey, in a very short time since we started doing this podcast, I have ascended so fast in some areas and have an opportunity actually to continue ascending, which is crazy. So I'm like, my goodness, like I feel in a way trapped because I know where I want to go and what I want to do. But I feel like because I don't own a whole lot to justify being my authentic, unapologetic self, I feel owned. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the reality. I feel owned. Like you own my time, you own my voice, you own a lot of things and I'm getting paid very handsomely for you to own me. And it's just like, this doesn't feel good at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of just being introspective. Like I understand like the Joe Rogans and these guys like who are full-time content creators because I'm able to partner with companies that want me to be myself because they understand the value in those who are following me. Like I have a following, right? So it's kind of hard to move me off my square when I've established myself as such. I don't think it's possible to be a part of a corporation who has no interest in being a voice for the culture and do what I do. Mm-hmm. So I have a lot to think about just myself.
And, you know,
in that regard,
a lot of that really is easy for us to say, but I think a lot of that is the responsibility of the corporation in terms of becoming more aware of the culture, you know, and really understanding. And it goes back to your riveting question of who makes these decisions and what are they based upon, you know?
Right.
So, man, this is tangled. But dude, that ownership take though, oh, you hit me in the soul with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like, real.
And it's not slavery. Because I think that's lazy. I think it's intellectually lazy to refer to as slavery.
That's a reach. That's a reach because you have a choice. You can walk in and quit tomorrow. Yeah.
Right. I can quit tomorrow.
Right.
And I've never heard of slaves taking trips and going on vacation. You know what I mean? Like, let's not do that. But being owners, being owned by your corporate, like they own, like in a lot of the things that they expect of us, they expect even when we've left the building, we've clocked out, we've taken off. That's how, you know, the person who was at my job, that happened when they were not at work, apparently.
Okay. So,
you know, being owned, like they own you, your voice, everything. So it's especially in this social media space, it's like now you have to be a lot more calculated if you wish to continue to be a part of this entity.
I guess I want to challenge. What does it look like if it's a little more, if it's a little less restricted? Like, what does that look like? And because I'm trying to step in the shoes of the organization, and it's so quick now to link viewpoints of people employed by company X to the values of Company X. It's so we're in that extremely easy to reach culture. It's just like, oh, well, Ronnie works for McDonald's and Ronnie thinks that, all Ferraris should be red. McDonald's thinks every Ferrari should be red, and it's just kind of like, whoa, so let's think about what it looks like on the other end. Let's just say, okay, we do the classic, what you probably don't watch infomercials, but there's
no, I do not.
There's a disclaimer that I know you've heard at some point in your life to where like the feelings and opinions of these people don't reflect.
You're right.
It's right. Short. We all know what it is, but I don't think it's said enough. And honestly, I'm thinking, what if organizations such as the one that you work for were to adopt this and really like push that to their employment base? Well, you run the risk of getting a lot of ideas from people, or a lot of statements from people saying these type of things, and a lot of statements from people saying these types of things. And even though you put that disclaimer out that says that doesn't represent us, we're just giving everybody their First Amendment right, it can still it still has the potential to boil up, and it ends up, I think, diluting your business prospect, because at the end of the day, this organization wants to conduct business. That's why we have policies, because we don't want riffraff, to obfuscate our primary goal of conducting business. It's about dollars for a lot of these organizations. So,
Absolutely.
It hurts me to think, what does it look like if an organization like that lifts that and just says, everybody come in and say what you want to say. Just get your work done. That could be scary.
They get canceled. They get canceled.
They get canceled. And that. I don't agree with that. Kind of with you. I don't agree with that.
Right. Because, again, I've seen people lose their jobs, and I'm like, did it really have to go there?
Right.
You know what I mean?
We talk about, and I'm slightly pivoting here, Walker, but we talk about the prison system a lot, and it's so easy to compare U.S. prison system to those in other countries. I think it's Sweden. It could be Sweden or Switzerland, but their prison system looks totally different. It's Sweden. More of is it Sweden, where it's more like corrective actions are given out in terms of awareness and reconciliation, right? Instead of, we're going to
be Switzerland.
Okay.
But I know Sweden is different though. Sweden is a little different.
Well, instead of saying, well, hey, Ronnie, you committed armed robbery. So our judicial system says you need to go to this prison for at least 20 years, do your time, and then, we're just going to throw you back out there if you're a good prisoner. And I feel like I really should know this, but I really feel like either Sweden or Switzerland, there's more corrective, there's more reconciliation, there's more restorative actions like, okay, let's get them access to mental health professionals. Let's find out
There's
why.
A rehabilitation process.
Yeah, rehab. That's what I meant to say. Let's find out what led you, Ronnie, to want. And I'm saying that I have not committed armed robbery. Obviously, I would not be here if I had. Figuratively speaking, let's ask. Hey, Ronnie, what is it that led you to that? Do you have some anger? Do you have some aggression? And instead of just throwing somebody in a box and just watching them rot away till their time comes up, you're rehabbing them in the meantime, thus putting somebody else back into society, a more whole or a better person.
Right.
Where was I going with that?
You're saying, what I think I get what you're saying is, instead of just casting people away and leaving them there, you're actually dealing with what caused them to say or behave that way in the first place.
Right. And
what if we as a society took that approach as opposed to casting them away and canceling them?
I feel kind of guilty because I do believe in that. And I feel like a hypocrite again. But I do believe in that. And at the same time, I believe in like, you gotta make an example out of somebody if they step out of line.
Is it a case-by-case basis?
It absolutely is, because we know some things are just wrong. We know some narratives are just wrong, right? We know that, but the gray area things, again, someone at the top has to manage that. And who is that person? And like, what are their beliefs? It's tangled, Walker, but. At the end of the day, you should never, as a citizen of the United States of America, you should never have the feeling of being owned by an organization. I understand it, and I agree with your sentiments, but I think it's wrong that you feel that way, because it's just like, yeah, we want you to be this. We want you to be employee number 891, and 891 comes into work at 8 o'clock, and he leaves at 5 o'clock, and he doesn't have any social life. Not that we know of, at least. But if he does, we're going to be looking at that too. And if he goes out of line, we're going to have to get. No, man, that's not America. It shouldn't be America, right?
Right.
Sorry, I'm getting turned up over here.
But I mean, you make a good point. Like, at what point do we draw the line and allow people, once they've left our place of business, allow them to be themselves?
Right.
Like, if I want to talk about, let's say we want to talk about white supremacy for the remainder of the year and go hard on it, is that okay? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's okay to us because we're reminded of it every day. Right? It's no sweat off our back. But what if one day we step on the wrong toe? What happens then?
What happens? Yeah, we're at the mercy of one individual who thought we went left.
Right.
It's like we don't get a trial. Yeah, we don't get to defend ourselves. We don't get to say anything.
That's all it takes. So, and again, to your point, I don't agree with it, but here we are as content creators. Here we are.
I just don't know what the solution is, Walker.
I told you the two things that I'm going to do. I'm going to work to get off to not be owned.
Well,
at least by a corporation that has a different agenda than I do. And I think that's what it when you talk about a cultural fit, like that's, as people, like, I was a great cultural fit a few years ago, but as I'm beginning to get comfortable with my voice and speaking truth to power in some regards, I could eventually find myself to not be a cultural fit.
Mm-hmm.
So what do I do with that? I find, or I either create a new culture of my own, or I join myself with a company or corporation whose values and culture matches mine. So when I speak freely, like the Joe Rogans, the Joe Buttons, you know what I mean? When I speak freely, it's all good.
All right.
Yeah, you get some pushback. Yeah, there'll be some people out in the world who won't agree and have problems with it, but I'm part of a culture that allows me to speak comfortably and freely without any blowback. So I think that's where I have to head. And, you know, we know there are podcasters who listen to us. That's if you're not full time doing your own thing, like, we might want to start, like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start looking for ways to supplement what I'm making on my job.
There you go.
In the event that something goes left, I'm good. That's my parachute. If I'm being pushed off of that ladder and I've climbed the highway up, I have a soft landing.
Right.
And I won't get hurt. So.
Very compelling, Walker.
Great conversation, bro.
But I would expect no different from you.
And I think that rings true for people who chooses to engage on social media, period. You know what I mean? And there are a lot of people who post memes, post things. Like, you're out there too. If you wish to engage in social media and be a part of that world, they're monitoring. I mean, again, someone who used to work in my job got canned because of something they posted. So it's interesting. If you really are, a lot of us have been passionate over the past few weeks as to what has happened with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and whatnot, and addressing the underlying issues and conditions that have led to Black people being at the forefront of coronavirus cases and passing and whatnot, and police brutality. Like, if you're going to address those issues socially online, just be mindful of the culture you're a part of. And if their values don't align with yours, you have some tough questions to ask. Do you feel comfortable being your authentic self? And many Black people, if we be honest, we don't.
Yeah. Just because the way society is structured now.
Yeah. So
heavy stuff there, Walker.